Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Total Wellness Mastery Show. I'm your host, Lauren Sanchez, board certified holistic health practitioner and founder of the Purposeful Wellness Corporation. And today, I want to let you guys know up front that we are going to be talking about weight loss, but we have a little bit of a spin on it, which is so near and dear to my heart. We're going to be talking about weight loss from the perspective, or from a Christian perspective, I should say. So if you're someone who's kind of sensitive to hearing things about that, or you're uninterested about it, no problem, no hard feelings. There's plenty of other interviews for you to watch within the show, but I did want to let you guys know that up front. We are going to be having our guest today talk about weight loss from a Christian perspective, which is something that's aligned with me. And if it is for you, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. So for today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Teresa Shields Parker, and she is a Christian weight loss coach. She is the author of 5 books, including her most popular one titled Sweet Grace: How I Lost 250 Pounds and Stopped Trying to Earn God's Favor. She is a regular contributor to Charisma Magazine and hosts her own podcast called Sweet Grace for Your Journey, which is so great. So thank you so much for joining us today, Teresa.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, my pleasure. And it's such a pleasure and blessing having to connect with you. So, as I mentioned, you have this incredible weight loss journey where most people struggle to lose, 20 or 30 pounds. That seems like a big feat for them. But you actually have a story where, like I mentioned earlier, lost over 250 pounds. So, tell us a little bit about your story and your journey in and out of obesity.
Yeah, you don't lose 250 pounds unless you've gained it first, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the difficult part of the journey and everything that went into that. But really, um, I the prime problem for me was sugar addiction, and I did not understand that as I was gaining the weight. So when I wasn't obese as a kid, I probably didn't start gaining. I started gaining a little bit of weight in high school, then in college, but really when I first got out on my own is I started gaining weight and I was far away from home. Still, I hadn't gone over that, you know, 200-pound mark, which was like always the looming thing that no woman wants to reach that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I, it- uh, you know, I probably, it was actually in 1977. That was the year I got married. It was probably almost at the end of that year. And I was doing my morning devotional. I was reading Matthew 17:20, and it was talking about how, if you have faith, the grain of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move, and the mountain will move. And so I was journaling my prayer and I just said, God, I have a mountain of weight on my body. Now at that point, it was over 200, but it hadn't reached 250. So
Mm.
I'd gone over that mark, and that was scary. And a lot of things went into that, and part of it was, your first year of marriage is beautiful, but it's also hard.
Yeah.
And so I had left a really good job, a job at a denomination. It was with a foreign missions group, and I really loved it. But I had given that up to come back to Missouri and marry my wonderful husband. And then I couldn't find a comparable job, and so that was part of it. And so I'm gaining weight, and I'm eating everything that my grandma cooked for me when I was growing up because she
Mhm.
was my person, my comfort food person.
Mhm.
And anytime there were difficulties growing up, and I had a lot of those, I won't go into a lot of them, but my mother was manic depressive as I was growing up. And so, as the oldest child, there were a lot of responsibilities that fell to me. And
Mhm.
so, going to grandma's was my oasis. And at grandma's, you could eat anything you wanted
Yeah.
and as much as you wanted. And she would fix your favorite foods even, and then she would leave all the desserts out on the side table where you could come back and get them anytime you
Yeah.
wanted. So of course, I was um, really coached by my grandmother and what will comfort you. And so, you know, so then as I'm a married woman, I'm fixing all of these desserts and all of these things for my husband. And he is a very uh, regular eater.
Mm.
I don't know how else to say it. A thin eater, pretty much. He'll eat 3 meals a day, nothing in between. He
I
doesn't
see.
really like many desserts or anything like that. So I'm fixing all this food, because I think, oh, a man's got to eat all this food.
It's the way to
He's
their
not
heart,
eating
right?
all
That's
that
what we've been
food.
told.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's not fixing all that food. And I mean, he's not eating all that food. But I was fixing all that food. So then who's eating all that food?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'm sitting there in my devotion, and I said, and I was really talking to Jesus because Jesus is the one that's talking in that passage. And I said, I have a mountain of weight on my body. How do I make this mountain move?
Mm.
And he gave me the most direct answer I believe he had ever given me to date at that time. And he said, stop eating sugar, eat more meats, fruits, and vegetables, and stop eating so much bread. I
Wow.
wrote it in my journal. And then I said, nice plan, God. I wrote this too. Nice plan, God. If I did that, I'd lose weight, but
Mm.
I can't do that.
Mm.
To see, because even by that point in time, as I look back on my journey, even by that point in time, I was a sugar addict,
Yeah.
but I didn't recognize it because I felt like I couldn't, I, I wouldn't live, couldn't live unless I ate things with sugar. Everybody eats it,
Yeah.
right? Everybody eats stuff with sugar. So why would God tell me I can't eat it?
Yeah.
And so it was almost it was an act of rebellion because and it was an act of self-sufficiency because I said, okay, I will let me try this on my own. Let me see what I can come up with.
Yeah.
So I would go on diets that were sort of that.
Yeah.
They were pretty restrictive, no sugar, no bread. Eat the meats, fruits, and vegetables, and only eat 1,000 calories. And I would lose weight. I could lose, when I gained up more than even where I was then, I could lose 100 pounds really easy
Wow.
if I did that. But the only way I could do that in my own self effort was to tell myself that at the end, when I had gotten to my goal, there would be a reward waiting for me.
Mm.
And it would be Mama's oatmeal cake,
Yeah.
and I could go back to eating the way I'd eaten before.
Mm.
And so I learned nothing on all of these diets that I went on. And I tried many different ones. And I always felt like a failure at the end, even though I'd lost weight. I
Mm.
still felt like a failure because I would gain it back plus more.
Mm.
And that went on year after year after year. And then I had 2 children. And of course, you gain weight there. And, it just kept snowballing. And finally, um, well, this wasn't even the final straw, but in 1998, I was hospitalized for a heart issue, and they thought it was a mitral valve that I needed to have replaced.
Mm.
And that's when I learned how much I weighed, because up until then, even when I went to the doctor's office after a certain point, they couldn't weigh me.
Wow.
And so I weighed on a freight scale at the hospital, and I
Wow.
weighed 430 pounds. And what they did was they sent me to the hospital for an angioplasty to see, not an angioplasty, an angiogram, where they send it
Mm.
up, the little camera up to your heart to see what's going on in your heart before they cut me open, before they did open heart surgery, which I was okay with open heart surgery because it's like I was feeling really bad, really sluggish. I couldn't do anything.
Mhm.
I was really, it felt like I was at the end of my rope. And so it's like, if, if, if this will fix me, then go ahead and do it. Um, but the doctor comes in the next morning after you've laid 8 hours do that flat, and he says, you don't need surgery. You need to lose 100 pounds or you'll be dead in years. Turns around and he walks out of the room.
Wow.
Lose that and keep it off.
Mm.
At least that, he said. And I knew I needed to lose more than that. But even losing 100 pounds and keeping it off seemed like an impossible task.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the time when I really faced my mortality and I really realized what I was doing to myself. And I had to understand, why do I want to live? Do I want to live or do I not want to live?
Mm.
And if I want to live, why do I want to live? And of course, my son and my daughter, seeing them grow up and seeing them get married and have kids and do all the wonderful things they're going to do, and growing old with my husband, all of those kind of things were there in why I wanted to lose weight. So I did, after that, go back on another diet, lost some weight, but still I was slowly gaining it back again. And so in this process, I lose the weight, I gain it back, I lose the weight, but I'm understanding I've got to do something about this. But all through that time, I'm still thinking that God would not be so mean as to never let me eat sugar again,
Yeah.
because sugar had become everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
It had become my addiction because I had allowed it to become a stronghold in my life.
Mm.
So strongholds, I understand, are things that we open the door to and they creep in slowly and then they just slowly overtake us. And the really interesting thing is they start as habits, right?
Yeah.
They start as habits. And so these habits morph into addictions and strongholds, and then they take over and they tell you lies. They tell you you can't live without sugar. They tell you this is the way everybody lives and you're no different from everybody else, and all of those kind of things. Anyway, I happened to go to a meeting, and I had by this time started losing weight and had lost some weight, really trying to limit the sugar and all that kind of stuff, but I still wasn't happy about it. And so I went to this meeting, and it was a friend of mine. He was telling his story about being I think it was 25 years sober alcoholic at that time. And he was planning on starting a harmful life patterns group where people who had harmful life patterns, drugs, alcohol, food, pornography, all of those kind of things could come together and work on their issues together. So he was telling his story. And I'm halfway listening because alcohol has never been my problem. My grandfather on my father's side was an alcoholic, and he died when I was 15 months old. And my dad made us promise that we would never drink and that we never become addicted. Those were the things I promised him I would never do.
Yeah.
And right in the middle of Russ's story, he said, alcohol is one molecule away from sugar. Alcohol is liquid sugar.
Mm.
And that was it. That was my come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been saved since I was 7, but this was my real come to Jesus moment. This was the time when I realized that's my problem.
Mm.
I'd accepted I had a problem. I just hadn't known what the problem was. And, understanding this is who I am, owning my problem, meant I was going to have to surrender that to God. And so after that meeting, I went on a drive through the country, stopped somewhere, and I don't even know where it was. and just bawled my eyes out and cried to God and told him I was sorry for what I had done to myself, because I saw this was of my own making.
Yeah.
This is, there are a lot of issues that go into why we do what we do. We can blame a lot of people in our past, how we grew up, genetics, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who make the choices, right? And so when I understood that, then I was able to start on the journey. Then I was able to start learning how to change my habits, because even though you realize you're a sugar addict, I had seen all of these times during my life where I'd stopped eating sugar and I'd lost weight.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would start I'd start eating it again after like 9 months or so of willpower,
Yeah.
determination to get this done and self-effort and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I realized that's not going to work. So I need to know, I need to learn what's going to work. And so out of this group that this friend of mine was doing, he started a group that was specifically for people who wanted to manage food in the correct way. And during that time is when I learned really how to go about this, how to really manage whatever the heck I was doing,
Yeah.
because I had surrendered it, but I knew I couldn't. It didn't mean that I was just going to give up sugar all at once,
Right.
because it was so ingrained in me. If I did that, and I'm pretty much an all or nothing person,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew for myself, if I said, okay, I'm giving up all sugar, and then I messed up and ate something that had sugar in it, then I would just say, oh, see, I can't do that. I
Yeah,
can't.
like the whole day's shot.
The whole day shot, I'm giving up. That's not working for me. And even though I really wanted to do it, I also really, really finally wanted lifestyle change. I didn't
Yeah.
want another diet. That didn't work for me. It's never worked for me. I want lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And um, so my mentor really helped me with that, learning how to do that.
Right. So walk us through now the process. Well, I mean, you said so much and you said so many great things that like stand out and stood out in my head. So the first thing was, oh, that's a great plan, Lord, but I'm going to try to do it my own way type of thing. Immediately reminded me of Jonah in the belly of the whale. Like he gave God, or God gave him clear instruction. He's like,
Yeah.
maybe not so much. I don't want to do it that way. So, and then you also mentioned a lot of people don't know or don't know the extent to which emotions and past experiences are tied to these weight gain and weight loss journeys. And I think that is
Yep.
huge. It's huge. And you have to, like you said, you said, I know I'm a person that's more so an all or nothing type of person. And it's important to know who you are as a person, because then you can set yourself up a little better for success when you know the habits that you have, the things that you are relying on food and eating for. Like in your case, you said it was for comfort. Um, so you said so many things that just really stood out in my mind, in terms of the weight loss and also in terms of being a child of God. So did you grow up? You grew up, you said Christian, right?
Yeah, we grew up going to church. My dad was a minister. He was a bivocational minister for many
Mhm.
years. So yeah, we grew up going to church. He didn't pastor a church until I was grown. He mainly did fill-in preaching and
I see.
interim pastoring and stuff like that. But he was still very active in the church, and we were very much a part of everything. There all the time, doors open. Whenever they were open, we were there, and
Mhm.
so yeah,
So did you
yeah, and
feel maybe like a more unique or stronger calling or push to lose weight? Because growing up in the church, you've heard things like your body is a temple, your body is a living sacrifice. Treat it well, essentially. So did you
Not
feel any type of like stronger pull to lose the weight and to get healthier because of the fact that you're a child of God?
not until God talked to me about my journey,
Mm,
because always I really felt like that, you know, those people that the preacher was hollering about that were going to hell were, thieves and robbers and drunks and prostitutes and all that kind of stuff, and we're not any of those kind of people. And of
right.
course, my dad was very, he had a lot of do's and don'ts. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so
Yeah.
there were a lot of, don't wear don't wear makeup, don't wear short sleeves, don't wear pants, don't,
Yeah.
sort of a lot of rules. But one of the rules that was not there and that I still don't see in the church is don't overeat. That is the acceptable, the sanctified sin
Yeah.
that we tend to indulge in, and nobody talks about it. Very few preachers even talk about it from the pulpit, because if they talk about it, they're going to have to follow it themselves.
Exactly. Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's a big issue. And that's really part of my calling, is to share this truth with the church, because I believe this is the devil's way of taking us out of the game of
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. Oh my
He's
goodness.
there
That
to,
is so, so key and so true. I think, these bodies that we've been given, them being in optimal health is the thing that allows us to, serve the Most High in the way that we're called to do. If we're sick, we're not as capable of doing that. If we're overweight and uncomfortable, we're not as capable of doing that. So that is absolutely true. I 100% agree with that. So did you,
yeah,
I guess so now that you said you did feel that kind of like unique calling to drop the weight and to get healthier. Um and then also I'm kind of all over the place because you said so many things. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I'm gonna zone us in here real quick about your book. So your book, the subtitle of it is How I Lost 250 Pounds and Stopped Trying to Earn God's Favor. So how did that weight loss and stop trying to earn God's favor, how are those connected for you?
yeah. Well, here I am. I'm graduated from a Christian university. I really feel a call to write, and I'm a journalist by trade. So, writing is my thing, and I feel a call to do that and to help people. But, I'm I know that God really wants me to lose weight, but I just kept saying, okay, God, I can't do that,
Mm.
but I will write more articles for you. I will edit this free regional Christian newspaper and not charge for it. I will work myself into a frenzy for you. I will do that. And I will teach Sunday school class, and I will be on all the boards and all of the, um, you know, all of the committees and all of that kind of stuff. And I found myself overworking, to try to make up for what I knew God really wanted me to do,
Wow.
what He was calling me to do, which is interesting because when He told me that, He had something in mind that He wanted me to do. He still always had that calling on my life to be a Christian weight loss coach
Mm.
and to write about this problem and to open people's eyes. But first, my eyes had to be opened.
Yeah.
And, um, you know, he had to work with me a long time to get my eyes opened, to see that that was my problem, that it's really a problem in the church that's not being addressed, and that it's where the devil is slipping in
Hmm.
right under our noses.
Hmm.
And it's scary, really is.
Yeah.
I've had I have people in my group who are on the verge of death. because of what they've done to their bodies. And I was there. So when God called me to coach, after I wrote Sweet Grace, and Sweet Grace really did really well on Amazon, when he called me to write it after I had lost 250 pounds, and to tell you the truth, I've always wanted to write a book. That's really been, and I always knew it to be about somebody who had done something amazing with God's help. So every time I
Wow.
do an interview, every time I do an interview with someone like that, I would try to say, okay, is this the one, God? Is this the one? And it never worked out, you know? And so in 2013, when he literally tapped me on the shoulder and said, now's the time. And I'm like, what time? Because I'd given up on that. That dream was gone for me. He said, I'm going to put you in the game. I'm like, what game?
Right.
He said, I want you to write a book. And I'm like, okay, you know I want to write a book. What's the book about? He said, it's about your story. And then I saw it laid out in the heavens, beginning, middle, end, inciting incident, climax, anticlimax, message, purpose, everything. And so I wrote the book in a fairly short amount of time after I got some help with it. Because once again, you know, I'm a self-effort person, so I'm going to do it myself. But I had to get a coach to help me do it.
Yeah.
And so she really got me on the right track. And then I wrote the book, and I still felt, I was still telling God, I don't care if only one person reads this book. I'm being obedient to do what you want me to do. And I really didn't feel like, you know, self-published books don't do well usually on Amazon. And yet, so this book really went to #1 on Christian weight loss memoirs really quick and stayed there for a long, long time. I think it's down a few now, but it was #1 for a long, long time. And part of that was thanks to Charisma for running my articles and sharing that, getting more interest out, because I didn't have a very big Facebook following then, or, you know, I don't even think I had Twitter or Pinterest or anything, or Instagram like I do now, but, you know, there wasn't a real way for me to get that message out. But when they started sharing my articles, then, you know, I started getting Facebook messages from people telling me their stories, and I was inundated by that. And really didn't know, you know, I would answer their questions, but I realized I don't have an ongoing relationship with them now to know, did they take my advice? Did they not? Do they have more questions? And so that's when I really saw the need to start a Christian weight loss group. And actually God called me to do that. I was doing a Sweet Grace study at my church, and 3 women stayed after and talked to me about, you know, we're really worried because you're going to end this study and now we're not going to have anybody to help us.
Yeah.
We're started on the journey. Now we need somebody to help us. So I told them, well, I'll be committed to you as long as you're committed to the journey. I didn't know at that time what that would look like. Like, I thought maybe an in-person little small group or something, but God showed me. I was actually in a business coaching group at the time, thinking that I was going to be doing more writing as business. And in that group, I saw how she ran her group, and I realized I could do a Christian weight loss coaching group this same way. And so that's when God tapped me on the shoulder and said, yes, I want you to do this. But even then it was scary, because I said, God, I don't know that I know how to do this, because I don't know that I know I'm the right person, because I know every excuse in the book. So if somebody comes into my group with excuses, I don't know how I'm going to treat them. You know, it's like, just do it, you know, just do what you're supposed to do. You know, I don't have the compassion I need. He told me, he said, you do now. And at the time, I was walking in to the pool, our community pool, where I usually exercise every weekday. And I was walking in there. I didn't feel anything different. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I walk in, I go to the pool area, and immediately my eyes were open to all of the people there who had always been there, who were extremely overweight and who
Mm,
had issues. And it was all I could do to hold myself back from running up and hugging them, and saying,
yeah,
I've got the answer to your problem.
yeah,
And so I knew at that point God gave me compassion.
yeah.
And I mean, compassion and patience, I think, is a big key. If you're a coach, you need that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so
I don't
fascinating
know if I
how,
answered.
yeah, no, you did. I was just going to say, I think it's
Okay.
so fascinating how you were looking this whole time for the person that you were going to write this book about. And God was like, there she is. She's in the mirror looking back at you. I think that's so
Yeah.
fascinating. So take us a little bit back. So take us back to that process of you losing the 250 pounds. So 250 pounds that's a long journey. So were there any, yeah, just tell us about how that journey of going down in weight was. Cause like I said, that is a long journey.
First and foremost, I had to realize that surrender moment. I had to understand that I'm a sugar addict. And then from there, my mentor started helping me learn the tools of how to handle that. And one big tool is habit change. So for me, that was the answer. I needed habit change. I had bad habits in my life, and um, I needed to stop them and start good habits in
Mm-hmm.
their place. It's really Dr. Caroline Leaf talks about this same process. It's like reorganizing your brain. Your neural pathways, are set in this one way, and now you want to rewrite that neural pathway with something else.
Mm-hmm.
But what he taught us was to start small,
Yes.
because if I started large with give up all sugar, and even if I kept that up, it would be by my own willpower.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still wouldn't have learned anything. So I wanted to say I'm giving up all sugar. That was my commitment level. But I started with candy.
Mm-hmm.
Candy is a very childish thing. It's something that I had started doing, just eating candy, because I could buy the bags full. And I had gotten to the place where I had sort of felt like I was put out to pasture. I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that I had been writing for a regional Christian newspaper, and that was really a dream of mine as well. Way back into high school, God had told me that I would be editing and publishing a Christian newspaper that was totally funded by advertising support, commercial advertising support, which wasn't being done at the time. It was all denominationally funded, and so I was always looking for that. So when that opportunity came up, and then the publisher left and gave the paper to my friend and I who were helping him, um, then that was like God just dropped it in our lap, and we were able to go forward with that. We inserted it in our daily our daily newspaper, secular newspaper, paid to insert it just like Walmart pays to insert, and we sold the advertising. So it was, now you can't do that. That back then you could, but now they won't let you do that. But anyway, we were doing that on a quarterly basis. We had 100,000 circulation here in the mid Missouri area. And so I felt like that was really my true calling. But then everything ended like around 2007 when 2003 actually, I think, is when we stopped publishing that. And the internet was coming into being, and free newspapers were going by the wayside. So we stopped publishing, and we just put a halt to it, and we changed our 501c3 organization to something else, and I was totally out of it. And so here I am. I'm feeling put out to pasture,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was a time when I was also eating and solace, the comfort, trying to get comfort from the food. And so So that was the first thing I stopped. I stopped eating candy, and I started exercising 3 times a week in the water at our daily pool for 30 minutes. I think it was it's what I started. And after I did that for a couple of weeks, I realized I really like this. I like doing this.
Mm.
And so I ramped up my time in the water, or I think I ramped up my days first. And then I saw that after I was stopping candy, I was going more to cookies and baked goods. And so I stopped that along with increasing my exercise. And then that's just kind of how it rolled out. It was habit change, and that tool, I call it stop start. I don't know what other people call it, but it's almost like, um, well, those of us with food addiction
Yeah.
are prone to be addicted to things, right? So let's be addicted to something that's good.
Yeah.
Let's instead of something that's bad.
Yeah.
So, and like I said back at the beginning, every addiction, every stronghold starts with a habit.
Yeah.
And so by changing our habits, we can change everything about us. And then it becomes like Romans 12:2 in the message says, um, fix your attention on God and you will be changed from the inside out.
Mm.
So it's a matter, we're body, soul, and spirit. There is lifestyle change that has to happen. When so I was in some kind of class, and they were talking about body, soul, and spirit, and so they drew like a pie with 3 pieces, and you've got body, soul, and spirit, and then around the pie squares, put 1 through 10, and then color in where you think you are on each one of these things to see if your wheel is rolling correctly, right?
I see. Okay.
My wheel was really lopsided.
Yeah.
I thought I was like a 9 in spirit, and like maybe a 5 in emotions, and like barely a 1 in body because I was breathing, right? And but I learned, and so I saw, okay, I've got more than just my body that needs to be worked on. But what I learned was this: I was a rebel at heart. I said no to God. I wasn't willing to follow him. I was willing to follow my own devices, and
Mhm.
that never works. And so God began showing me more of how to listen to him and how to follow him. And some of my starts then were daily time with God, you know, um, getting more into his word, understanding more of what he wants for me, taking time to actually spend time listening to him,
Yeah.
which I had never done before. All I did was talk.
Talk. Yeah.
And,
So true.
I never listened, and I never wanted to know, who are you, God? And
Yeah.
what do you want to say to me?
Mhm.
Not just what my agenda, what my to-do list is.
Yeah.
Here's my to-do list. Bless it and let me go on and do my
Yeah.
work.
Just make it happen, Lord. Thanks.
Yeah, because I'm very work driven,
Yeah.
and that's part of the on the Enneagram. I'm a 3, which is an achiever. So you know, um, with the Enneagram, you need to mediate that, right?
Yeah.
Achiever is not really the best thing. Achiever is doing your own human effort. And so God can use that, but it needs to be mediated to
Yeah.
where I'm going to follow him. And that's when I can be the most successful, is
Yeah.
if I follow what he's telling me to do. Nothing I've done in my life has been as successful as following what God wants me to do.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. So, were there any other scriptures that really you just held on to during your journey?
Yeah. Um, 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10 are really key scriptures for me. 2 Corinthians 12:9 in the message says, let's see, my my grace is enough for you. It's all you need. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. I think
Mm-hmm.
it says, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And I think the really interesting thing about that scripture is, and this is what I ask my coaching clients, is God strong all the time? Well, yeah, he's
Yeah.
strong all the time.
Yeah.
Then why can't is his strength made perfect in our weakness?
Mm-hmm.
It's because when we give up, then he can take over.
Yeah.
But first, we have to lay it down.
Yeah.
Because as long as we're trying in our own self effort, it's like he's like, okay, I'll just let you go
Yeah.
until you learn how to let me handle it.
Yeah.
And really, his grace, strength. That's why the title of my memoir is Sweet Grace, because it's his grace, strength that really propelled me forward to actually follow habit change.
Yeah.
I never thought I could do that,
Yeah.
but following it, first the surrender, first the acceptance, second the surrender, the owning of what your problem is, and the surrender, and then the third, the other step is to walk out your journey and learn how to do that,
Yeah.
and know that there will be failures along the way. I mean, I've had failures, and yet what I learned is failure is a great teacher. It teaches
Yes.
you what you're not supposed to do, and it shows you where you're, where where the devil is targeting you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like one of mine was failures was I was at a conference, and I had lost a lot of weight by this time. I was probably close to the 250-pound mark. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd been on the journey quite a while. And a friend of mine was cooking for the conference. I was eating gluten-free by this time and sugar-free. And she knew that. And she was putting little placards on the food so you could tell, because some people were vegan, gluten-free, all this stuff.
Right.
So she put gluten-free on these cookies, right? And I'm the first one through the line at that day. And my thought was, I need to eat one of these cookies because it has gluten free on it, and she probably made them for me
Yes.
because there was only one other person there that was gluten free.
Mm.
But I had a feeling, because it didn't say sugar free, that it probably had sugar in it. And
Right.
if you know what peanut butter gluten free cookies are, they're primarily peanut butter and sugar.
Sugar.
And so I think I took two, and they were so good. Oh
Oh.
my gosh. So then I go back and I get some more, and they were so good. And so then I go back and I ask her, because they're all gone. So I ask her, do you have any of these that I can take home to my husband? Now, remember my husband who doesn't eat desserts?
Right.
Yeah. So, she said, no, I don't have any of those, but I do have some oatmeal cookies left. Okay. Oatmeal cookies is what my grandmother and I used to bake together.
Oh.
Those are my favorites. And I said, okay, well, yeah, he likes oatmeal, and he will eat a cookie every once in a while. So yeah, I'll take those to him. And so I'm driving home, and of course, I'm eating a cookie. And I hear God say to me, what are you doing?
Mm.
And I rolled down the window and threw the cookie out. And I said, yeah, I'm throwing this away, and I'm not going to eat anymore. And I went home and gave them to my husband, told him to hide them from me, throw them away, do whatever he wanted to with them, but I didn't need them. My son and my husband both still do that to this day. They will hide things. Like the other day during the COVID crisis,
Yeah.
our church came by and brought church members uh, plates of cookies, and I didn't even know they were here. So I said to my husband later, I said, did the church members come by? I hear they're coming by. He said, oh yeah, they did. And I said, did they leave some? He said, yeah, cookies, but we did away with those for you.
Oh.
So it's like they know, I'm grateful for that. The
Yeah.
support that is another big thing that you need is support on the journey. You need that
Absolutely.
support to where they understand your issue and they don't see it as a difficult thing for them to maneuver around,
Yeah.
that they are commensurate with what's going on with you. So
Wow, that's incredible. And thank you so much for being here with me and for sharing with me and our audience your incredible story. I feel like you've given so much inspiration and encouragement to people. I want to ask you one more question before we sign off, though. So, for the woman or man who is kind of on the fence, they know they need to make a change in their life, but they're kind of, like I said, they're on the fence. What encouragement do you have to kind of push them in the right direction?
that's an interesting question because pushing is really scary for someone who has a weight issue.
Yeah.
So pushing them is difficult.
Or
That's why I
directing or
wrote
guiding, guiding them.
even I mean if they need to lose weight and they want to lose weight, if the desire to lose weight, that's one. But if they don't have a desire to lose weight, not can do besides live your life and let them know. That's one of the things I talk to my coaching clients about because, they are many times pulled by family members or others who want them to eat sugar or want them to eat this or that
Yeah.
that's not on there. And I teach that you you compile your own forever lifestyle change with God's help. And so they've got their own lifestyle change plan that they've made, but then this friend comes along and they're deterred off of it. And I tell them, you don't know that you might be the instrument that would really help that person. So if you stay true to your journey, that's going to be a testimony to their journey.
Hmm.
But really, if people want to lose weight, they have to accept where they have to go through I have 5 stages. One is wishful thinker, which is, I'm just wishing I could lose all this weight. So that's really the acceptance phase where you know that you've got this problem. Um, then willing owner, which is where you define what your issue is and you surrender it to God. The next is watchful learner, where you're learning the tools of how to walk out this journey. And then the third is wholehearted traveler, and that's really the experience stage. This is where a lot of people fall off the wagon because they'll get out of a coaching group after they've learned everything,
Mm.
and now life throws them curveballs and they fall off the wagon, so to speak, and they don't know what to do about it. They don't have anywhere to turn. So I really tell them stage 4 is critical stage. It's kind of like the student teacher stage, where you've learned in college, you've learned how to be a teacher. Now you got to go out and you got to experience that and put it into practice. And then the last stage is wise overcomer. And even when you get to that stage, you cannot believe that you have arrived. We have not arrived. None of us have arrived, especially those of us with food addiction. Now, not everybody falls into that category of a food addict. Some people that have 20 pounds to lose can lose the weight and go right back and start over again and be okay with it. But and some people can eat a little bit of sugar, and I understand that and I acknowledge that. I can't.
Yeah.
That's off limits for me. God has made that clear to me. And I also eat gluten free because of the bread issue.
Yeah.
Any wheat breads, those kinds of things will pull me as well. So whatever pulls me towards it being addictive is what I have to watch out for, because another scripture, First Corinthians 6:12, which says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything.
Yeah.
That's really where I am. Yeah, I can eat that. It's lawful for me to eat that,
Mhm.
but it's definitely not profitable.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be mastered by anything but God.
Yes. Yes. Oh, wow. Well, thank you again so much for being here and sharing with us. Before we sign out, I'm going to have you talk about the gift that you have for listeners.
Yeah. Well, I have a free program called Kick Sugar. It's a 10 video course. And it's not 10 days to end sugar, but it's 10 strategies to use. And a lot of these strategies are spiritual as well as some physical strategies as well. So I touch on that. And it's just a short course, kind of an introductory course into the way I see weight loss and how it needs to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that generous gift with everyone who's listening. And for those of you who are listening, I highly recommend, especially if you feel any type of tug on your heart towards Teresa's story. If you see yourself in that story, definitely go download her free gift that we have for you guys. You have the link to it in the email that you received notifying you of this interview, and it should also be in your swag bag at the very bottom of this page. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Total Wellness Mastery Show. I will catch you on the next one.